Exactly 4 minutes past the top of the hour. You're right on time for our second and last conversation this Monday morning. And we look at refugee integration. That is what forms center of our conversation for the next 15 minutes. Just looking at where we are as a country as far as this integration is concerned. Looking at it also from the human rights perspective and also exploring the new Refugee Act. To what extent is it a departure from what was in 2006, as well as just what community-based organizations are doing in respect to the same. I have created FaceTime with Ayan, Mohamud, who's a project manager at Tawakal, community-based organization to my farthest right. Right next to her is Fabian Oriri, a refugee rights lawyer, and also Damaris Onyancha, program advisor at Kenya Human Rights Commission, KHRC. Ladies and gentlemen, karibu to the program.
Thank you so much.
Let me just latch on this particular conversation with you, Ayan, just very quickly. Tawakal, the CBU.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about it.
And actually, Tawakal is a community-based organization, but we actually work with the refugees. Most and like 70% are refugees. And we actually started this program when around 2014, 2015, when actually the undergoing of the terrorists and everything. Yeah. So we actually wanted to educate the refugees how countering violence and extremism, not to be part of those acts and those ideologies. So actually it's just a platform for the refugees to exchange ideas, to talk about their issues and their problems they are facing. And actually we work with the women and girls because most are the survivors of GBV. So we actually do counseling for them. I'm a counselor, I'm a psychological counselor. So we actually talk to the young refugees, girls and survivors of GBV. So it was never easy for a refugee to come and talk about and express themselves. But actually we have programs like people with disabilities programs, we have women empowerment programs, we have youth in inclusion programs. So now actually we came very far, and it was never easy. So that's when Tawakal has started around 2014, 15, yeah.
So this is like 9 years.
Yeah.
And of course we'll come to track the progress there. And again, just this tying with your own story, because you came to Kenya at the age of 7 as a refugee. You also tell us how that was. But before then, Damaris, when you talk about integration, just basically help us understand what exactly are we saying. I mean, I was just telling all of you earlier that when someone would assume and say that by the time you're leaving your host or mother country and you're coming to Kenya, either to Dadaab or Kakuma, whatever camp it is, I mean, we already picked you enough. So when you say integration, just what exactly are we talking about? What is this?
Integration for me is having this refugee. This is a person who left their home. They had plans, they had a lot, and basically their life was just going on as normal. They had just bought property, they were doing laundry, something, and then just all of a sudden there is conflict, there is a militia, there is either the government is hunting them down, and they have to leave everything down and, run for it. And when they come, they are expecting, at the bare minimum to experience some bit of human rights. So for them, being integrated is just them being well settled as well as possible with dignity. It's them having access to education, them being able to, get health services without a problem, food, being self-reliant, being able to make decisions just on their own. I remember in 2015 in Dadaab refugee camp, I met this elderly Somali guy, and he comes and he has his thesis, his master's thesis in agriculture, and he comes with the books to the office and he asks me, what do I do with this? He's studied up to master's level, but there's nothing he can do. He's limited to the camps. Sometime late 2019, I met another man. He had been in Kenya before as a foreign national. He was here 2010, 2011, doing his master's and MBA in the University of Nairobi. And during then, he was able to do consultancies, statistics, economics. He was able to move around the country. He was making money as he was studying. He had a company running back home in DRC. 2014, he's attacked. He's a Banyamulenge, the other, ethnic clashes happen. He runs to Kenya with his family, and he comes, and it's different. As a refugee, it's different. It's not like being a foreign national. Yeah. He doesn't have certificates, or even if he has them, he does not have access to employment. And for him, the biggest depression he had was, I see young men being able to work. Where I come from, I'm a provider, but I'm not able to provide for my family as I used to. This is a person who has an MBA now selling vitenge on the streets. They wake up every morning and walk miles and miles selling vitenge. So integration for me is when this person comes, the rights, a people-centered approach, the rights that they are able to have, are they able to move around? Are they being able, self-reliance? Self-reliance is just being able to make so many decisions. I remember we were talking earlier and we were saying, yes, you're in the camps, you're given food every day, but I would just want to decide what I want to have for dinner and what I want to have for lunch. Well, someone will argue if I'm just being given beans every day. Someone will argue, Damaris, by the time I am hosting you, just a classical example, just like if you're coming to my house and I'm hosting, why would you be having a choice? I think it's just dignity. It's dignity. It's dignity as a person. If where I come from as a Kisi, I'm used to eating matoke. All of a sudden, I'm in a refugee camp, and every day I'm given beans and maize. I'm already a survivor of violence. I have seen a lot. Most of these refugees I've interviewed. I interviewed this one young man. He left his country when he was 80 years old. He doesn't remember much. All he remembers is seeing dead bodies along the road when they were walking on foot, living. And they walked really long distances, getting, they get on a lorry when they find the lorries that, come from DRC to Kenya in some places, and some places they have to walk. But such a person who comes in and you take them already to this harsh climate area in a refugee camp, they don't immediately have access to education to continue with their dreams, which may be something that may change their lives eventually. Really, I don't know. I'll just say is giving this person dignity and having a human rights-centered approach in the management of refugees, and not just looking at security and yes, security is important, but can we just have them dignified? I hear you. Yeah. And of course, it's important for me to ask some of these questions because, well, there's so many assumptions surrounding, refugees and just basically what integration means. But Fabian, you hear all this, and just going from the examples that Damaris is telling us, even for people who really have the papers, I should say, but they really can't do anything much. They don't have the documentation. They can't get that gainful employment. The new act is providing for things such as this ones. Where are we with this new act since it took effect in February last year? 14 months later, where are we?
I think it will be fair for me to lay some basis for the new act. It's quite a unique act in Kenya. And it's not just to be read at the Refugee Act number 10 of 2021. It's an act which expressly incorporates international laws and regional laws. Actually, the long title of the act is to give effect to 1951 Refugee Convention and its 1967 Protocol and its 1969 Convention on Matters Governing Refugees in Africa, the OAU Convention. So it's an act which is quite robust. It gives an avenue to go beyond just the express words in those few sections and try to shift further. What does the OAU provide in solving the refugee crisis in Kenya? And indeed, it's true that if the act is to be implemented fully, it's not yet there. If it's going to be implemented fully with the requisite and proper political goodwill, governance goodwill, and all public shaping goodwill, shaped opinions, then we're going to see Kenya being a house, a powerhouse to shift the refugee practice, not only in Africa, but also in the world. So the implementation and what maybe my two sisters have alluded to is that the Refugee Act provides quite segmented approaches. I usually classify them to three. The realization of economic rights, and that's what we've been stressing on, right to work. That right should be there, and everybody should be given a right to work. And if there is any systematic bureaucracies which limit those rights, then we should be having an honest conversation to it. There's also some social aspect.
Just before you go to social, Fabian, I mean, let's just stick on that economic bit for a moment, because, I mean, if you are not empowered in that aspect, especially if you are used to this in your mother country, then really there's nothing much you can do. And we are getting examples from, you know, both what Ayan and Damaris are saying. So, and you're saying that we need that goodwill, for instance, because you're saying not so much has been done so far. So really, what is happening? What is hampering this to take effect?
Let me I will give some few examples and to illustrate that, the economic rights. One key issues which refugees are battling is the right to work. But you see, it might sound so simple, and you may ask, what is the problem?
Yeah, because I was about to, what is the problem? I mean,
yeah.
What's the problem?
So the genesis is just being an honest conversation that under the Kenya Citizenship and Immigration Act of 2011, it created, under its regulation, it created a classification, Class M work permits, that refugees, for them to work, they must have Class M work permit. Now the problem is accessing those Class M work permit. I can tell you for sure, it's now more than 12 years. If the statistics are out, we are having less than maybe 10,000 refugees who have been, not even 10,000, 5,000 refugees who have been in work permits in a population of more than 700, almost 700 refugees. So the problem is that a refugee might be qualified to work. He might even get a letter of employment to work. But you see, the employer will ask, okay, now you have, no, you are competent, but show me the work permit. And then he goes to apply for the work permit. It becomes all chaos. How work permits are issued in Kenya, and Class M specific, they're actually, to me, in my very understanding, they're the source of discrimination. Because the issuer, who is the immigration department, somehow treats a refugee by default like a foreign national. But you see, a refugee is a sui generis person, a unique person. He's not like somebody just who came from Uganda to come here. He's somebody who fled under specific circumstances, who is having a lot of problems because he fled his country.
So when you say, just allow me to butt in for purpose of clarification and to understand, so when you say that a refugee is being treated as a foreigner, does it mean that they get the same form of identification, or what is this?
Usually in the issues of work permits for foreigners, foreign nationals, there are some categories of qualification which they must be subjected to. The problem is using the same standards to a foreign national on a refugee.
All right.
You know, and giving a blind eye to some unique features which should be given an accord to refugees. But my point is, on this, because I'm more interested in the, you know, the solution being provided by the Refugee Act 2021.
Yes.
In my honest understanding of that act, the act expressly provides the right to work. Under that act.
It's well cut out.
It's well cut out. Actually, it's an express, to me, is an absolute right. The only thing which the Refugee Act provides that, okay, you work, but should you not remit taxes, then you're creating an offense. But not that you working is an offense. So what we're having is this harmony between the Kenya Citizenship Immigration Act and the new Refugee Act. So unless we have an honest conversation whether Class M work permit, as I said, they are becoming a source of discrimination, should we do away with them and then empower the refugee ID, so that as long as a refugee who has undergone the refugee status determination, which is quite a rigorous process to be given that refugee status, we empower that refugee ID, that once a refugee has that ID, he automatically can work. So he can go to employment, they say, I'm a refugee, these are my documentation issued by the Kenyan government. Please, let me work. But know that you have the refugee ID, get employment, and you're being told, go get us Class M work permit, which getting it is a problem. And trust me, it is a problem when I say that.
It is a problem. You've been...
You're all like, just want to add to what he's saying. There's also the argument that, especially for the refugees who have been born here, so you have been through the same education system, the same curriculum, everything as a Kenyan. So ideally, there is no special or some specific skills or experiences you're bringing outside that a Kenyan does not have. So then the question remains, why should you apply for a work permit?
Yet you're born here, much as your parents came in as refugees.
Yes, you're basically part of this country. You're not a foreign national coming from Norway to come work. You have been in this system from the beginning.
I hear you. So clearly, I mean, just already from what you're enumerating, a lot needs to be done. But Ayan, what was your story? I mean, when you came to the country, 7 years, you can barely remember much.
Yeah, true.
But just for you to be seated here, to even have a CBO, clearly you are Kenyan right now. That integration, how was it for you just moving to the point that now you are a Kenyan? We can't say that you are a refugee anymore.
No, I'm a refugee.
You still are?
Yeah, I do have that status.
You still do have the status?
Yeah, and actually I have seen it and I have been discriminated with my alien ID. Actually, I don't see the...
So you don't have the...
Yeah, I do have this kind of
ID?
No, I don't have a
you
Kenyan
have the alien ID.
Yeah, I have
regardless.
the alien ID, yeah. Regardless of learning, going to high school, university and everything. But I have this alien ID and actually it doesn't even help me. I didn't carry. The gateman said, "Where is your ID?" I said, "It's useless. I can't carry my ID everywhere."
So what did you show him?
Because I didn't show him anything. I just expressed myself and then we talked.
Yeah.
So and then he told me, I came in. You know, the alien ID we have, it looks like just a Kenyan ID, but it just wrote here, refugee alien ID. And there is a scenario that happened to me. I show it to a policeman. He said, "What is this?" They don't even know. The government itself, they issue the ID, and the government itself, most of them, they don't know what is this.
So what
you can't work. So we just took it just for fun. I don't know, but you can't get bank and account, and you can't register in banks. M-Pesa. I actually registered with my cousin's ID in my M-Pesa. You know, it actually feels so weird. And when I talk about the work and the work permit M-Class, when my colleague was saying is that this work permit, actually you can't even process. He said 5,000 refugees has applied. But when I came across many refugees, they have this kind of issue, because I know a guy who works in Eastleigh. He has a business. Imagine, he actually he went and he went every time to issue a work permit, but he never did get. He has to provide for his family. He has things. When he wants to survive, he's an urban refugee. If you're an urban refugee, your NHR will never give you anything, food and shelter and everything. You won't get anything. So urban refugee means you're not living in the country. Yeah, actually, you're in urban refugee means that you're actually stable. You can help yourself. So he actually went to approach his friend. I want to work. I have this kind of money, but I just want to open a business, but I can't process. Help me. Give me a business permit. You know, he actually registered through his friend in order to survive. You know, it's not easy. And actually a refugee and challenge extend beyond mere adoption. Much of this comes with, they have a lot of challenges. They flee from their country, and coming to our host communities, you feel like you'll see weird stuff. Like I have seen many girls marrying a Kenyan man to be a citizen. You know, maybe it's not even your... So
you're tying your life just for citizenship.
To get a citizenship.
It is that bad.
Yeah, it's that bad. So I don't think most of people comprehend and actually understand the issues of a refugee is facing. This person actually, most of them actually experienced seeing their maybe mother or father being tortured. Most of them actually, you know, they have seen weird stuff that actually people can't actually comprehend beyond. So it's not easy, and it was never been easy for a refugee. And actually say it's not easy. I can't work. I'm a psychologist, but I can't go for a place to work for it.
So that's why you do your training then?
I did my training through and because I have a high school certificate.
From Kenya?
Yeah, from Kenya. That's why my aunt helped me apply for birth certificate. I got a birth certificate. I needed to get an ID, a citizen ID, but my father is not a Kenyan, my mother is not a Kenyan. It became very hard for me. That's why I dropped that thing to be a Kenyan, then I became a refugee.
So then just let me backtrace a bit. You have schooled in Kenya,
yeah,
or from
primary,
yeah, up until your higher learning to do psychology.
Yeah.
What documentation did you use to even just go to school?
No, I didn't use a documentation. I got actually a scholarship.
Okay.
Yeah, a DAFI scholarship. So I got scholarship. That's why I started learning for psychology. But it was not easy because you have to provide a Kenyan's an ID in order you to start a university, you know. Yeah. And it's not easy. So there is this kind of this organization actually help you through do like an education and everything. They do the process and everything that you'll just go with their card and you'll get and you can learn. So
that's how you're able to do this without any like documentation, without any Kenyan ID. Yeah. But then how did you also open the CBO? Is there anything that was required?
No, actually I opened the CBO through in the host community.
As well as through and through here.
I work with the host community, and actually we have a lot of Kenyans working with us. I'm not the only one. I'm their leader, but there are Somali Kenyans who actually feel and they want to be part of the discussion. They want to be part of the platform. So we registered as a Kenyan because they helped me with the IDs and everything. They are the ones who registered it. I'm not the one of the
you.
Yeah, I'm not.
You just work there.
Yeah, I work there because you can't open an RLO without a Kenyan ID. It's not easy. Everything you have to provide a Kenyan ID.
It is not easy.
Yeah.
It's just not easy.
No, it is not easy.
Yeah. And I'm seeing a lot of departure. Now you're the legal mind here, Fabian. Just listening to what actually all of you are saying, like what Ayan was also practically saying there, that the police, I think it was also you who did say as well, that some of these documentations you will be given, but even the police don't, like the alien ID, they don't even know what this is. So the same, it's still government, much as it's different agencies. They don't understand. I don't know why there's this departure. And also, as you respond to that, you also talk about how there's still a departure with the Immigration Service Office and the new act, because yes, the new act is providing for A, B, C, and D, but the Immigration Service does not seem to know what this is. So then how do we help this situation? Because it's still government, but the same government does not understand what the same government is doing.
Yeah,
it is true. That is the tragedy of the government in its provision of services. What she's saying is true, and maybe to make it more clearer also on that is that the refugee ID itself has not been greatly populated into government services. So the government issues that refugee ID is the same like my ID appearances, and she said just the change of name. But this specific one, I can easily log into eCitizen and start registering a company or maybe do some online services. But the refugee ID has not been properly integrated. So, and if it's not going to be properly integrated in eCitizen services, what we are saying that a refugee cannot actually open a company. What we are trying to say also, if the refugee ID is not integrated in even Nairobi County online portal, to ensure that once you key it up, the refugee can even proceed to open a business name or maybe a business permits, then we're having a huge problem. If the refugee ID is not populated properly to the KRS system, just like my national ID, actually we are missing it completely. It's a whole political miscalculation to say, you know, even the government is going to lose revenue because a refugee will not even pay taxes because it does not have the KRA PIN. The problem is the government has not populated it.
I hear you just told it there. Before we took that live, just speaking to Fabian, perhaps look as, you know, the missing links as you had told us, and even as you continue responding to that, you will also tell us how we can broker that, looking at how we can bridge these missing links, so that we do not have the same government offering solutions and still problem underlining because lack of understanding therein. What more can you tell us with that, in regards to that?
Thank you so much. It's always good to have a break.
Yes.
So,
and reflect and think.
Absolutely.
Okay.
What the government needs to do, number one solution is to populate the refugee ID into the government systems.
Yeah.
But the question is how? I don't believe that we need even to amend alone that. It's purely a directive. So if, for instance, and it's true as I highlighted, the government is missing a huge revenue source when they are not populating the refugee ID into the KRA system, it's your document, you're the one who issued it. Just as you issue, populate it to KRA system. And you're going to get revenue because refugees, of course, when they do business, they're going to do that. If we are seeing a problem opening businesses, companies in e-citizen, just populate it. You just need either a directive from the PS or a CS, as simple as that, a communication to ensure that, hey, populate it completely, just like a normal, the way you populate a foreign national, do the same to that. By so doing, we'll be healing a lot of things. One, the apparent sometimes discrimination of that refugee ID give by the issuer, who is the government. And also maybe to also make a suggestion that there is always a huge process, a huge time in processing the refugee ID. Sometimes it can take even a year. What we are saying that, hey, the government, you can do this. Just ensure you process that ID within at most a month. You see, it's just a direct, because you have the fingerprints, you have all the systems. And maybe to always suggestion, because, and what I've been stressing about that, let not be the document issued by the government be the source of discrimination. Let not be the initiative of the government to populate all the services into digital be actually an exclusionary approach towards a refugee. Let there be an inclusion. If I'm a Kenyan, this refugee is my brother, is my sister, and is my friend. So let everything be populated, and by so I think we'll be changing now the narrative. I know something which we need to have a candid conversation on is Class M work permit. From the very beginning, whether it's supposed to be there or not. And if supposed to be there, what can be done so that perhaps when the refugee ID is issued, it's either empowered to also serve as a work permit or it's given simultaneously the work permit. We are not saying that employ people. We actually say give them the right to work, let them just look for work as anybody else.
I hear you. And I can tell you for sure there's really quite a lot we need to have discussed, and we could have discussed, including even part of what is featuring in this new act, including even integrating a refugee from the 7 member states of the East African community. But before we even look into all that, there's something I had said that I really had to ask. And this is also, you know, featuring into this new act, and this is largely, yes, they can be able to live, but within designated areas. And I was just wondering, what is this designated area? Because if you're giving someone the right to live, and you're saying that this new act will provide for that, because ideally with the Refugee Act of 2006 is that they could only stay in camps. You come from whichever part of the continent you're coming from, you can only stay in that camp. So even if you had your master's, your PhD, I mean, that's it. That's ideally it. But then, designated areas, which ones are these? Which areas are this?
The new Refugee Act does, unfortunately, does not define what a designated area is. And looking back to the 60s, to the 80s, the practice were refugees were allowed to move around anyhowly. And most people benefited from refugees from Uganda as teachers then. But then we had an influx in the 90s when Somalis really came in due to the conflict
I hear
in
you,
Somalia.
Damaris, and from what you're saying, I can already deduce that there's really quite a heavy story you want to tell us from that. But I'm really sorry to cut you short. And the entire team. I think we need to pick this conversation again next week, because you have to cross over to Diani and you have to cap this discussion at this particular point. Like I said, there's really quite a lot we could have discussed, and we have to do that. But we have to head over to Diani. I believe the CSICT is speaking. We cross over to Diani.